Today, we are going to talk about signature automation with RightSignature. So, what's really cool in Podio is we can do a number of things as it relates to sending and tracking documents for e-signature. So, in today's video, we're going to show you how to generate PDFs using workflow automation. We're going to show you how to then send those PDFs through RightSignature so we can obtain an e-signature on those documents. We're also going to pull in some data from Podio to populate certain fields within those documents. We'll show you how we can leverage Podio to then track, our signature status, follow up, things like that. And then once documents are signed, we'll show you another workflow that we can use that's triggered when the document is signed to come back and take another additional action or actions inside of Podio. So this kind of thing is really good for any type of contract work, approvals that need e-signature, agreements. You can probably imagine there's dozens, if not hundreds of use cases for that. So we'll show you a couple of ideas just to get you started, show you how we build these things. And then hopefully this will be enough for you to start doing some testing and build out on your own. So from a workflow automation perspective, there's a handful of things in play here. I want to call a couple of these out. And certainly the workflow types, the triggers and filters and actions that you're going to use, those are going to vary depending on the use case. But for today's use case, you'll see us use things like triggers for on an item update. Like I said a minute ago, we'll show you one where the trigger is the document itself being signed and coming in and kicking off additional actions inside of Podio. We'll leverage some filters around field changed and field match, just so we can trigger a document to go out. And then actions, we'll show you how to make a PDF using workflow automation. And then we'll show you how to then send that PDF out through RightSignature to get the e-signature obtained. One thing that we'll touch on briefly, there's, you can see down here in the bottom right, there's also this option to send via RightSignature doc template. Same type of outcome, just a little bit different way of getting there. And we'll walk you through what both of those look like. And what I want to do first is just kind of walk you through the setup of my apps and my scenario, just so we're kind of level set on what it is we're looking at, how we're building these documents, and what these things are for. So in my little make-believe use case, I've got an app for lead intake. Now, these are just web form submissions. You can see here we've just got simple phone, email, and a status. Basically, in this process, what I'm doing is once somebody submits this, I'm going to check qualified or disqualified. You'll see if they're qualified, they're going to follow it over to our contracts app. And this is where a lot of the work in Podio is going to be done. If I open one of these up, you'll see it's got our name, the related lead. You'll see we've got a couple of fields here, category fields for contract status and contract actions. We're going to be using these things in tandem so that as we build our document and send it out for e-signature, we'll be able to track the status of that automatically as well. You'll see we've got some things in here like contract value, contract details, date, so on and so forth. So we'll be walking through one of these things live. Now, one other piece of architecture I've got here is an app called Demo Settings. So what I've done, and there's different approaches to this, but just to kind of keep things easy, what I've done is I've pulled some key settings for our workflow into an application itself. So if I come over here, let's look at this one first. So this is going to be just an email that goes out. You'll see it's got the settings name, the doc subject, our contract body. So when we're building an actual contract from our agreements app and creating the PDF, instead of having all of this information live inside of the workflow, I'm having it live in this Podio item. You could go either way with this. Everybody's kind of got their own preference. But when it comes to managing a large number of these, oftentimes it's easier to manage these things in an app itself than to go try and figure out, where was that workflow that actually sends this thing out, for signature, and where do I find it? How do I go update it? What I'm doing here is just kind of centralizing this into a Podio app. You'll see I've also got a logo image link. This is just a public image link to get my logo. And then I've got a follow-up email. So once this document is signed, you'll see when we run through the process, we're going to fire off a confirmation email. Again, just to let them know that, hey, thanks for signing up to the Progress Podio team in this scenario. we've got your executed contract, and we'll get in touch with the next steps. So again, rather than house these things in the workflow yourself, what you'll see when we get into our workflows are these two items from this app come into play. So what I want to do next is I just want to walk through the overview of the outcome. So let's start kind of at the end of the book. I'm going to show you what it looks like in Podio to build and send this document for e-signature and what happens there. And then we'll go into the apps and the workflows and kind of deconstruct everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to lead intake. Let's just do this test email address. Let's say I don't like phone calls or emails. I'm just going to say text. So very simple web form. We get a little splash page here. No problem at all. So just like any other Podio app web form submission, it comes in. Here's my lead. We see I captured the information from the web form. I'm just going to quickly move this to qualified. And we'll see our workflow kicks off the creation of our contract. So let's go ahead and let's navigate over to our contract. So you'll see things are pretty straightforward. This is not a complex contract that we're building out. Again, certainly you can take this type of scenario, this type of idea, and extend it further. But this should give you a couple of ideas as to where to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and let's just give this thing a value. Let's say 25,000. Let's just say these are my contract details. Detail 3. Let's say our contract is going to be effective at the end of the month. And again, what I'm doing is I'm putting this data here in Podio, which is nice because obviously then I can go, and do some things like filter and report against those numbers, and all kinds of things. But the other part I can do is I can pull these into a document itself to send for e-signature. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to use our contract actions buttons, and I'm going to say, let's build a contract. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and we'll see the workflow run. We'll see that it added the contract here in the activity. If I just do a quick refresh, it'll load down here as well. But what our workflow did is it went through and leveraged the make PDF action, and we just created a nice simple PDF. So you'll see what we're doing here is we're using this settings item to grab the context here, and that's what's being used to pull this information into this document. So we'll see here it's got the name, it's got our contract effective date, it's got our value, it's got our details, it's got our signature block, and a place for our customer to sign date and signature, or name, date, and signature. So now what we want to do, let's back out of there. Let's go ahead and actually send this for e-signature. So I'm going to click send. And what's cool here is we're going to see that our status automatically changed from new to out to review. So now I know, I've got this contract out for review. I know the date. You can couple that with things like date-based workflows to schedule follow-ups, things of that nature. But what I'm going to do is pop over here to our email, our test email, and you'll see I've now received this request to sign the document. So I'm going to come in, review, and sign. And we'll see here, I can now put in my name. I can select the date, put in my e-signature. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. So as the end user, I am done. I can review it. I can download it. And let's come back over here. We just missed it. You see this is still green here, but it updated our contract status to signed. And we'll see here via the workflow, we'll see contract status move to sign. We captured our contract sign date, and now we have a copy of the signed PDF. So I'm just going to do one more quick refresh. I've now got a copy of this signed document here on my Podio item, and I've got the signature certificate attached as well. So for my user, I do get a confirmation where I can review and download the document. And again, if you recall that demo settings app, I had a follow-up email, and that email is just tagged to let this user know Thanks for choosing to partner with us. You'll receive a copy of your fully executed contract. We'll be back in touch in the next 24 hours. So again, a very straightforward use case, but one that across different scenarios, whether they're contracts, approvals, reviews, anything where you need to grab data and populate a document to be signed, this type of workflow works really, really well. So, okay, let's go into the actual workflows. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up our contracts. And one more time, I'm going to open these demo settings just so I can kind of walk you through this. So if we look at our template of our app, again, it's very straightforward. We've just got some statuses. We've got a money field, a multi-line text field, a whole bunch of hidden date fields, so we can see when certain activities happen here. So very straightforward there. But let's pop over to our workflows. So the first workflow I want to look at is our build contract workflow. So what that's doing is, again, when I came over and I put in our values, I was hitting build contract. So that's what's going to trigger this workflow. So we'll see my flow type is when an item is updated, and if our contract actions value has changed, and if it is changed to build contract. So when we click that build contract button, what we're doing, again, using this settings app, we're going and searching for a specific item, inside of that application. So what I did is I told Workflow Automation, go search in this app for an item where the name is equal to RightSignature demo settings. So what it's doing is it's coming to this app and it's grabbing the information here. So I'm getting the settings name, I'm getting the document subject, I'm getting the contract body, the logo image. So now all of that is available for me to use inside of my workflow. So I'm also getting the referenced lead. So basically what I'm doing is telling it, let's go to our related lead intake from our related lead. So that is grabbing the details from this, mostly to get the email. And now I'm going to use variables in a couple of ways here. So one, I've got a variable for our logo. That's just a way to get the logo, into the document. You'll see I'm also adding a logo for our value. Now, the reason I did this, just to show you real quick, is if I go get our value, and I just pull this in as a straight token, you'll see here that it's just the digits, 25,000. The straight numerals. But over here, my contract value is 25,000, with the thousand separator, with two decimals, and with a dollar sign. So what I'm doing inside of the workflow automation is I'm using a little bit of PHP to be able to format that number out. So if I come over here and do that, let's see if I can make it. There we go. So we'll see now I'm formatting my contract value that was pulling in with just the numbers. I'm now formatting that with the dollar sign, thousand separator, and decimal. Now my date, I'm doing the same thing. So let's just do another quick one just so you can see. So let's go grab the contract effective date. And you'll see it formats it in this weird, day, month, year kind of format. I said I didn't want it to look like that. I wanted to format it a little bit differently. So what I did, let's just get this to mess up so I can add this. So what I did is I just made this a straight month, day, year format with a dash. Pretty easy to do with PHP. Now the next one's a little bit more involved. If you've been working with workflow automation for a while, you've seen things like this string replace. But basic what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one variable to go grab this entire contract body item from Podio and do things like replace the name brackets, the date bracket, the value bracket, and our details bracket with the actual data coming from our Podio item. So the way I did that here is just one by one. I did a string replace command and I said replace our name bracket with our lead's name. And then I said, let's go replace our date bracket with our variable for the date formatted, because again, we want to use this date format. Then I said, let's go grab the value and replace that. So again, I'm using my variable that I created, my value formatted. So I've got my nice, dollar sign, comma with the decimal places. And then finally, I'm replacing the details with the details from the app item, which is this set of details here. And then finally, what I'm doing is I'm just appending on the rest of the contract body. So basically what this thing is doing, this little variable is now, again, looking at this entire contract body, pulling it in and saying, let's go replace the name, the date, the value, and the details with the data that's coming from those Podio fields themselves. So my final action then is really clean and simple. So I'm creating a PDF and I'm going to allow it to attach to this item. The file name, I'm just going to use the contract name, save to Podio item. You could see if I wanted to, I could save this to a ShareFile folder. We're going to do another video about the ShareFile integration for files. But what I'm going to do is save this to the Podio item. I don't have a header in this one. Basically, what I did is I just used our logo variable. So I said, let's go grab the variable that we created up here called logo. I grabbed our variable called body and put that here. And then what I did is I've got a spot for name, date, and signature. Now, one thing I did here that's a little bit sneaky, a lot of the partners will implement this as well, is if we go back and look at the document we created, you'll see here it's just white space after the name, date, and signature. But that's really not the case. When we look at workflow automation, let's go ahead and actually make that text. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm using what we call text tags with RightSignature. So what I'm doing is after name, I'm saying we want to insert in RightSignature a text tag, and I want it to be assigned to A, which is the first person, and then the R indicates that it's required. So when we'll run this again, but when we go look at those fields in RightSignature, you'll see that that's a text field. It's assigned to A, which is in this case, the only, but the primary signer, the first signer, and it's a required field. So then what I did where our date line is I did another text tag, but I said, let's insert a date field. So the D indicates date, A assigned to the first signer in our process, R, I made that required as well. And then finally, what I did for signature is I put in S for signature. So RightSignature knows to put a signature action there. And again, we're going to assign that to our person A, our first signer, and make it required. Now, all I did to make that document look clean, and this is more just a really kind of picky thing other than anything else, is I just made those text tags white in this. So what I did, if I come back over, is I just said, let's go make this apply. So you'll see they're still there, but it's just white. So then I save that. Actually, let's go through and look at the simulation of the variables so you can see this happen, and then we'll show a preview of the document. So let's go grab the one we just did. So you'll see this thing is running and it's going through and it's grabbing all of our information. So it's doing the creation of our logo. So we'll see it grabbed that public facing URL. It's grabbing our number format. So you'll see it's pulling in our number format, but then it's telling it we want 2 decimal places and a dollar sign. So we're formatting it there. We'll see our date. It's converting it from this 31 of October 2025 to just this 10/31/2025. And then you'll see in this test item, this is where it's going and replacing our strings. So it's replacing name with Joel Hall, date with the actual date variable that we created up here, value, same thing. We're using the variable token that we created there, our details. It's going and pulling all of that in, and then it's going to construct our PDF. So let's just run a quick preview. So we'll show you what this PDF looks like again. So we can see everything tests out and works. We've got our name, we've got our contract effective date, we've got our numeric value in terms of dollars with our thousand separator and decimals. We've got our contract details. Our text tags are hidden here. But you can see we obviously pulled in the rest of the language here. So pretty straightforward to do. Then what we did is we said, now we want to send this contract. So what we're doing is another trigger workflow when an item is updated, except this time instead of the contract actions being billed, we're going to click send. So let's get rid of some of these tabs. So when I click send, we're going to do the same thing. We're grabbing our demo settings, so we have that information. We're getting our lead information, and we're going to send this item via RightSignature. Now, if I search RightSignature here, there's actually two of these. This document could live as a template over in RightSignature. If I were to choose that, what I could do with my Podio fields is I could add those to that document as a merge field, and we would be able to then send the document exactly the same way that we're doing here. The only thing is that I'm doing here is I'm telling it to send an item or send item file via RightSignature. So I'm telling it, grab the most recent PDF, which again, if we go back to our workflow, would have been the one that was just created. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to send that to our lead name, our lead's email address. I've got our subject line, again, coming from here. I've got a custom message I can add. I can choose whether or not both parties sign, and I can choose the number of days in which it would take before it expires. But then what I'm doing after I send that document is I'm saying, let's come back in and update this contract so that the date sent gets tagged as the current date. And our status, if you recall, moves from new to out to review. So again, now that we've done the work of creating the PDF, this step is even easier. And then finally, let's look at our document signed workflow. So what I'm doing here is there is a flow type called signature document signed. So what that allows me to do is it allows me to trigger a workflow based on the signature of that document we just sent. So when a file is signed in RightSignature, I want to update this contract. So I want to tell it our status is now signed. I want to tag the sign date as the current date. I've got a manual flow here for our confirmation email. We'll come back to that. And then I totally forgot what I did. Maybe we can open this up in a second. Is I did create a ShareFile folder inside of our demo folder, and I saved a copy of our signed item, our signed agreement to that folder. So if we come over here, we'll see, obviously we've got our signed document that was part of this workflow. Let's actually come over real quick. Let's go into ShareFile just so you can see this. Little two-factor authentication. So let's go over to folders in this old account. I put it in demo. So we'll see here, it did create our folder. And here's a copy of our signed document. Now, the last step in the workflow that you saw is as part of this workflow, it was triggering a manual flow. What I did here is I just made our email confirmation flow a manual flow. So basically, same kind of concept as our PDF. We're going to format our email, but instead of using this demo settings item, I'm using this one. So same kind of concept. We've got the settings name, we've got our contract body, our tags. This one's a little bit easier because all we're doing is replacing the name. So I'm searching for this item. So search demo settings for this one, RightSignature follow-up email, which is this. I'm getting our referenced lead, so I can grab the email address there. I'm creating a variable for our email logo. And then same thing for the email body. This one's much easier because it's just one string that we want to replace. It's that first name. So we're going to tell it replace first name in brackets with our lead first name. And then we're going to tell it to get the rest of the contract body as well. So this field, it's going to get our email body. And then we're just going to send an email. We're going to send it to the email that we captured from our related item. It's from the Podio team. Subject, we're grabbing that. And then our email is as simple as a couple of tokens that we created up above. So again, if I want to preview this against the one that we just sent, you'll see here it's grabbing our logo image, parsing out the text field. So we get this nice formatted email that's ready to go out. So then what's nice about that down the road is, let's say we want to update the confirmation. I can't spell confirmation in the email text. So all I've got to do is do that here. The next time that workflow runs, let's actually come in and look at this. Let's preview this against the same item. So now let's see, we've got this new line here. And all I had to do is go switch this up in our Podio settings items. I didn't have to go, find the workflow, mess with all the text, remember which text is in which email action inside of which workflow. So we just kept it really clean and simple there. So again, just a quick recap. Our core application here is our contract application. We're leveraging a workflow to create this contract that's got a related lead. We're capturing some information like our contract value, our contract details, and the effective date. And then it was kind of a two-step process. We're building the contract, which created this initial PDF. And then we were clicking send contract, where then once that document was signed via e-signature, our status changed from out for review to signed. It tagged the date that the document was signed. It added our document back here. So we've got the document on the Podio item. So here is a copy of that with the signature certificate. The other thing it did is it did create a folder in ShareFile and added our signed agreement to that folder as well. So if I come back out here, you'll see in our demo folder, this was the folder that was created, and it's got our signed document. So again, a lot of things you can do with this type of workflow. One thing I just realized as I'm looking at this, the RightSignature actions, how did we even get those enabled inside of Podio workflow automation? Probably important to cover. So if you come up to your account and go to account details, it's actually really, really easy to do. There's two steps. The first step is we want to configure RightSignature. So mine, if I hadn't done this yet, would say connect. I would click connect. I would go through that authentication process that you just saw me do a minute ago with ShareFile. And it would grab any document templates we've got there, make those available, and now those workflow actions that we talked about would be available. Same thing for ShareFile. If I hadn't yet configured it, I would click connect. It walks me through the authentication process to my ShareFile account. I would be able then to do things like, let's just go create a flow here so you can see. So if I click for RightSignature, I can send a PDF, or I can go push information from Podio into a template that already exists in RightSignature. And then from the ShareFile side, and we will do another video on this, you'll see what I did is I was able to then create a folder and save files to that folder. So a lot of cool integration things we can do there.